Good morning, student. I am Dr. Shivaji Andhale, Department of Botany. On behalf of Bharata Vidya Prasak Samaj, S.V.K.T Arts, Commerce, Science College, Devali Camp. Dear student, today we will discuss about in a previous lecture about the transpiration. What is my transpiration? Loss of water in the form of water vapor through the atmosphere is called as a transpiration. Then the significance of the transpiration. It is a very useful or beneficial for the loss of water molecule through the atmosphere to maintain the temperature inside the leaves as well as the atmosphere. They can be maintaining to them, and these water molecule can be utilized to them to maintain the peripheral region as well as the internal side of the temperature of the leaves. Then type of the transpiration, there are the different types of the transpiration. Majority there is a stomatal transpiration, there is a loss about 85 to 90% of the loss are through this stomatal transpiration. Second one thing is the lenticular transpiration, they can be also occurring by the 2 to 3% of this water can be lost to them. And third is the cuticular transpiration. These are the three types of this transpiration. The structure of the stomata. Generally in a dichondrial stomata, these stomatal guard cells are the beam shape structure or kidney shape structure. And this stomatal structure is covering by this peripheral cell, it's called as a subsidiary cells. Guard cell, these are the inner side of this guard cell is very thick as compared to the outer side. When at the daytime the stomata are open and at the night time the stomata are closed. They are the structure of this dichondrodon, this is a dumbbell shape of this guard cell, but in the monocotyledon this is a dumbbell shape structure. And also similar way, there is the inner side of this structure is a very thick and outer side of the cell is a very thin. Why? Due to their entry of the water molecule inside that stomata, there is a certain of this pressure can be created to them, and these different types of pressure like osmotic pressure, suction pressure, wall pressure and diffusion pressure deficit, and hence these pressure can be very essential for opening of this stomatal structure. Majority these stomata are there two types, means dicotyledon and monocotyledon. Then today lecture we will discuss about their factor affecting rate of transpiration. There are different types of this factor, they can be affected by the rate of transpiration. Just an example is the light, wind, humidity. This is a major factor and availability of water molecule. These are the factors, they affect the rate of transpiration. When light intensity is much more, the rate of transpiration is also high. When light intensity is low, the rate of transpiration is very low. When also depending on the wind velocity, when wind velocity is high, the rate of transpiration is also high. When wind velocity is low, then the rate of transpiration is also low. Another thing, there is a moisture and the humidity on this peripheral region of this plant. When huge amount of moisture or abundant are present at the peripheral region of the plant, there is a loss of water molecules very less. When dry of the humidity, humidic pressure or dry of this atmospheric pressure, at that time the loss of water molecule is also much more. Next thing is the availability of water molecule inside the soil. Water is a very essential factor. Availability of water molecule is huge amount inside the soil, then loss of water molecule is much more. They can be uplifting to them and they can be lost through the atmosphere. Another thing is the antitranspiration. Mostly the plant can be utilized about 1 to 2% of the water molecule, but remaining of the water molecule can be lost through the atmosphere. About 98 to 99% water molecule are lost through atmosphere. And hence these plants, so many plants do not survive on the surface of the earth. And there is a very essential of the anti-transparent certain of this chemical substances like wax coating or sort of this chemical they can be using to them, they can be sprayed to them, and there is a loss of water molecule can be stunted to them, and there is also this plant can be survived for 1 month or much more, about 1 to 2 months can be survived to them. Another thing is a guttation, means the water molecule can be lost directly in the form of liquid form. It is called as a guttation. In the marginal portion, this water molecule can be lost through them. Next is the exhaustion. Also similar way, there is a guttation is another type of stomata. It is called hydathode. It is called as a water stomata. And exhaustion is also certain of the marginal portion is certain of the injured part. There is also exhaust the excess of the water molecule through the atmosphere. It is called as exhaustion. Today we will discuss about the one by one. First is the factor affecting the rate of transpiration. First is the internal factor or environmental factor, and another thing is the external factor. Means they are these two factors, they are affecting the rate of transpiration. We will discuss about the one by one. First is the external or environmental factor. In the external factor, first is the light, second is the humidity, third is the temperature, fourth is the wind, fifth is the atmospheric pressure, and sixth is the availability of the soil water. These are the different factors that affect the environmental for the loss of water molecule. Then we'll discuss about the another is the internal factor. First is the stomattal frequency. Number of the stomata are present on surface of the leaves, lower and upper surface. There is also depending on the loss of water molecule to the atmosphere. Next thing is the structural peculiarities of the leaves, or depending on the size of the leaves or structure of the leaves, there is also major factor for the loss of water molecule. Third thing is the leaf area. In a leaf area, even leaf size is a much more like banyan tree or banana tree. The leaf is a very large. These plants, there is a loss of water molecule is much more. When leaf size is small, the loss of water molecule is very less. Another factor is the root shoot ratio. Depending on the shoot and depending on the root, presence of the root, there is also a major factor for this loss of water molecule through the atmosphere or transpiration. It can be also affected to them. We will discuss about the one by one external factor or environmental factor. First is the light. Light is a major factor for affecting the rate of transpiration. When it is a dominant effect of the stomatal opening and closing also. When light intensity can be placed on the surface of the leaves, they trap the sunlight, and ultimately this energy can be very useful or beneficial to them for this photosynthesis process. At the same time, these light can be absorbing to them. There is certain of the reaction can be takes place inside the leaves, and hence stomata can be opened at the daytime and stomata can be closed at the night time. Stomata open in a light. Light is a very essential. Without light, the stomata do not open to them. Increase the rate of transpiration depending on the intensity of the light. Dark stomata are closed and transpiration also stunted to them or stopped to them. Another factor is humidity. In a humidity is external atmosphere affects the transpiration. It is a measure the humidity pressure is much more the humidity in the atmosphere. There is a less, very less number of this loss of water molecule can be takes place. When humidity is much more, then humidity is dry, then loss of water molecule is more. Then a gradient in a strongly depending upon their leaf air space and their also in the external spaces. Also this humidity can be also affected to them for depending on the leaf air and the space size of these leaves. External spaces can be also depending to them for the transpiration. Then gradient is strongly depending on the leaf temperature. When leaf size is large, humidity is very less, then ultimately temperature can be increased to them, and hence the loss of water molecule can be much more. Increasing the temperature, increasing the water holding capacity. When temperature is increasing to them, then ultimately the root here they can be absorb the huge amount of water molecule inside that soil. They are depending to them, they are vice versa process. Then the next factor of this rate of transpiration is the temperature. When I am increasing the temperature within the physiological range, increase the rate of transpiration. Then intensity of the light, ultimately increase the temperature, and huge amount of lost molecule or water molecule can be lost through the atmosphere. Then affect the temperature on stomatal opening. There is also a major factor. About 0 to 30 degree centigrade temperature, there is a major affected to them for the loss of water molecule through the atmosphere. Increasing the temperature, also the increasing the rate of transpiration. When decreasing the temperature, ultimately the loss of molecule can be also decreased to them. Then their next factor, wind. Water vapor from the surrounding of the leaf and increase the vapor concentration. Water from the surrounding area. There is also the leaf size. There is also they are depending to them for the loss of water molecule. When increasing the wind velocity, ultimately the increasing the rate of transpiration. Wind is a high velocity also reduce the rate of transpiration. When wind velocity is very high, much more, At that time, the loss of water molecule can be decreased. The lower the temperature and decrease the rate of transpiration at that same time. Then another factor of this rate of transpiration, external factor, is atmospheric temperature. The rate of transpiration increase with the reduction in atmospheric pressure also. When the atmospheric temperature is very effective to them. The plant grow on hills show the high rate of transpiration due to their degrade atmospheric pressure. The atmospheric pressure is also a major factor for loss of water molecules. Then another is availability of soil in water molecule. This is very important and very useful for the rate of transpiration. When water molecule is not available inside the soil, ultimately the rate of transpiration is also decreased to them. The availability of water is used out inside the soil to root to the plant and effect of this efficiency of this absorption of water molecule. When ultimately this water molecule is not available inside the soil, these water molecules do not absorb by the root here, and these water molecules do not lose through the atmosphere. Ultimately, this plant can be stunting their growth. Non-availability of water, they are drastically reduce the rate of transpiration. Ultimately, they are reducing to them. Majority they are depending in the availability of water molecule inside the soil part. Then internal factor. There first is the stomattal frequency. The stomattal frequency varies from the plant to plant depending on this plant. Certain of this plant stomata are present in the lower epidermal cell. Certain of this plant there is stomata are present in the upper epidermal cell. Certain of this plant there is stomata are present in lower as well lower and upper epidermal cell, and certain of this plant is sunken type of stomata. The certain of this plant is number of stomata is very less. Certain of this plant is number of stomata is much more. They are depending to them. Number of stomata is there is much more. There is a loss of water molecule is also high. Number of stomata is decrease or low. The loss of water molecule is also decrease. These are defined as the number of stomata per unit area. They are a major factor depending the loss of water molecule or rate of transpiration. The rate of transpiration depending on the opening of stomata. At the night time, these stomata are closed, but at the daytime, these stomata are open. There is also their major factor for frequency, means number of the stomata, and also there is opening and closing of the stomata. There is a major factor for the loss of water molecule through the atmosphere or transpiration. Next, the structural peculiarities of the leaf. This is the adaptation including the reduction in the size of leaves. Certain of acacia plant, leaf size is highly reduced. There is a formation of very small leaflets. And due to this modification, certain of this plant is modified its leaves into this thorn formation or spine formation. And this spine formation ultimately the loss of water molecules can be very decreased or very less. Some of the xerophytic plants have needle-like leaves. Best example is Pinus, Natum. These plants, they modify to them these leaves into their needle-like structure. In this needle-like structure, the stomata number is very less, very less number, and ultimately the atmospheric pressure or this humidity is much more at that location. And mostly these plants can be grow at the hill station. There is a low temperature region. There is deposition of the cutin or wax. Certain of this plant is formation of the cuticle, cutin or this is a wax coating. There is also a major factor for the loss of water molecule. When this plant, certain of the plant, they are modified to them, generally in a xerophytic plant, they are modified to them, there is a formation of the wax coating. And this wax or cutin coating, ultimately the loss of water molecules is very less. They can be decreased to them. There is a major factor. Another thing, in a xerophytic plant, there is also modification also occurring to them. There is a sunken type of stomata surrounding by their hygroscopic hair. In sunken type of stomata are present below the 3 to 4 layer inside that epidermal cell, and these plant or xerophytic plant is the formation of 3 to 4 or 5 layer of epidermal zone, and this internal side of this epidermal zone, the stomata can be developing to them. And they are very small. And also, these are very small, and not only small, but also in the upper portion of the epidermal cell, there is a formation of hairy structure. In that type of hairy structure, it can be developing to them. When loss of water molecule in that hair and these hairy vapor can be, they can be also do not pass through outside, they can be also stunted by, they can be closing to this hairy structure, and ultimately this water vapor can be also converted to them in the liquid form, and these water vapor can be also goes in liquid form and then also pass through this opening of the stomatal aperture. And hence generally mostly in the xerophytic plant there is a formation of this specific characteristic feature called as sunken type of a stomata. Now, presence of the hydrophilic substances such as the gum, certain of the mucilage, certain of this plant, there is a releasing certain substance through outside, certain of the gum releasing, certain of the mucilage releasing outside, and due to this releasing to them, ultimately the loss of water molecules is very less. Just take example Acacia nilotica or certain of the Azotec indica, certain of this plant, the upper surface of the stem as well as in the branches, the formation of their exhaust the liquid substance called as a gum or mucilage, and hence ultimately this aperture of the lenticule, there is a closing to them by this gum or this aperture mucilage in a sheath, and ultimately the loss of water molecule can be decreased to them. Then another factor is the leaf area. Greater the leaf area, greater will be the rate of water loss. Depending on the size of the leaves. If size of the leaves is large, ultimately the loss of water molecule is also very large. A huge amount of loss of water molecule can be also occurring to them. Then root and shoot ratio. The efficiency of the water absorbing organ and transmitting surface also control the rate of transpiration. Efficiency of water molecule means depending on the root hair, how much amount of root hairs are present at the lower portion of the leaves. Ultimately, the number of the root hairs are present, huge amount of root hair are present, and hence they can be absorbed by this water molecule and they can be lost through the atmosphere. Ultimately lost through them. And hence they are depending to them for the ratio of root and shoot. There is a major factor for affecting the rate of transpiration. Sorghum has a more advanced secondary root and developed than the corn. As compared to the corn plant, this sorghum plant or this jawar plant, there is much more advantageous root they can be developing to them. This is also very useful or beneficial for the extra absorption of water molecules through the atmosphere also. This is also root and shoot their ratio. They affected to them. Then anti-transparent. The water is absorbed by the plant is lost to the atmosphere by the transpiration, and almost 99% of water lost through the process of transpiration, and only 1% to 2% utilized for metabolic activities. Most of these plants, they are lost through them about 98 to 99% through the atmosphere, and only they can be utilized only 1 to 2% of the water molecule for the different types of the reaction like a photosynthesis process or certain of the another reaction inside the plant. Inside the plant there is thousands of the reaction can be takes place. Hence plants can be called as an organic laboratory, and these different types of the reaction they can be utilized for only 1 to 2% of the water molecule. Remaining of the water molecule can be lost through the atmosphere, and there is a very essential of certain of the anti-transparent substances to can be spray on surface of the plant, and then ultimately the loss of water molecule can be minimized to them. Excessive loss of water through this transpiration result in there is a temporary and they are permanent wilting. When in that time there is a excessive huge amount of loss of water molecule can be takes place, ultimately these plant can be resulting in they can be or wilting in position due to their loss of water molecule, and hence these certain so many plants are endangered on surface of the earth. They can be controlling to them for anti-transparent, they can be using to them by certain of this chemical, and they can be spray on surface of this plant. They can be minimized to them for loss of water molecule through the atmosphere. These are necessary to reduce the rate of transfer by artificially. Means artificially can be using to them, they are applying to them by certain of the spray, certain of the chemical substance like certain of the wax coating. There is a very useful, so much beneficial to them for control the loss of water molecule, and ultimately these plants can be survive on surface of the earth. Use of anti-transparent is highly economical and it is important in agriculture. They are very useful, so much beneficial to them. Means certain of the plant can be survive, without water they survive from only 8 to 20 days or 10 days. But These anti-transparent can be utilized to them, they can be sprayed to them on the surface of this plant. Ultimately, this plant can be survived for 1 month or much more this month, or about 2 months also they can be survived to them. Due to their huge amount of loss through the atmosphere, and hence ultimately this water molecule can be lost to them and plant can be wilting to them. So many plants are endangered on the surface of the earth, and hence there is a very essential for use this anti-transparent in a highly useful or beneficial for her economically, as well as important in agriculture also. So it was recently in a at the rainfall, there is also tremendous changing out of the rainfall, and hence these farmers huge amount of in the rainy season, so many farmers can cultivate difference of the crops, and due to this very less of the rainfall or due to heavy rainfall, there is so many affected to them for the yield of the crops, and certain of the duration, certain of the location, there is a very less number of the rainfall, ml of rainfall can be occurring to them. At that location, these plants can be survived, certain of the plants are modified to them, and certain of this plant can be using to them certain of this chemical or anti-transparent, and these plants can be survived for 1 to 2 months, and there is a completing their life cycle also. There is a very essential of this anti-transparent substances. Then another is the properties of the anti-transparent. It should be in a prevent the loss of water without their affecting the O2, CO2 and exchange of the gases. It can be spray the anti-transparent. Ultimately, they do not affect for the exchange of the gases at the time of transpiration, at the time of their respiration process, at the time of their photosynthesis process. At the photosynthesis process, there is an equivalent amount of O2 molecule can be lost through the atmosphere, and equivalent amount of CO2 molecule can be absorbed by this atmosphere through the small aperture called as a stomata or stoma. It should not be damaged the stomatal aperture permanently. When this certain chemical substance can be sprayed on the surface of the plant, these substances do not damage permanently for opening or closing of the stomata. Just their certain of the duration, about 1 week, 2 week, 3 week or 4 week, they are affected to them for closing of the stomata, and ultimately the loss of water molecule can be decreased to them. It should not be affect the photosynthesis and respiration, means also this chemical, certain of this wax coating do not affect for their photosynthesis process, means they can be trapping to them by the sunlight and is converted into glucose or fructose molecules, and also respiration process they do not affect in them for this exchange of the gases by using this anti-transparent. This chemical should be easily available and economically. There is also major factor. When these chemicals are not available in the market, there is also so many, there is not available, and also economically there is a very high cost. Farmers do not purchase in the types of the chemicals. Hence, these chemicals are easily available in the market, and their price of this anti-transparent is very low. There is a very essential or beneficial for this farmer, and ultimately increasing the yield of the crops. It must affect only the guard cell. These chemicals can be sprayed to them, or these are the do not affected for a subsidiary cell or other cell, only affected by the guard cell. Guard cell is the opening and closing of the stomata. They are the close to them, certain of the duration, certain of the times, and hence ultimately the loss of water molecule is a very less number due to their affecting by the only guard cell. Then type of the anti-transparent, first is the film forming or physical barrier anti-transfer. Second is the stomattal inhibitors. We will discuss about the one by one. Film form physical barrier anti-transfer. This is a very important group of the anti-transparent. The colorless plastic, there is very thin layer, or silicone oil or low viscosity waxes. They are these different types of this chemical substance. They can be using to them, they can be sprayed to them on surface of this plant, and they will use forming the film. They are the permeable to them, means there is a permeable to them or pass through them for the O2 molecule, and also comes out of the CO2 molecules without any effect by applying this colorless plastic, as well as the silicone oil, as well as the low viscosity waxes. These causes there is partial closure of stomata. These chemicals can be using to them. These stomata are partially just small, they are closing to them, and hence ultimately the loss of water molecule is very less. Then another thing is the stomatal inhibitors. There are also in a sort of the fungicides like phenyl mercuric acetate. These are the used in the stomatal closing. They are the fungicides. They can be very useful or so much beneficial to them for loss of water molecule through the atmosphere. These fungicides can be used to them for just their small or just closing of the stomatal aperture. And when stomatal apertures are closing to them, ultimately the loss of water molecule is also decreased to them. When these PMM is they are the spray. These are the chemical set of this. They can be sprayed to them. Means phenyl mercuric acetate. They are spray. It is a result in their partial closure of the stomata, not a permanent close. Just few of the month, few of their week, few of the 1 to 2 week. They are these stomata are partially closed to them. Means half or much 1/3 of the stomata are closing to them, and hence ultimately these stomata are closed. There is a loss of water molecule can be decreased to them. Nowadays there is a salicylic acid and there is a aspirin. These two chemicals they can be very useful or beneficial to them for spraying this on surface of the leaves, and loss of water molecule can be decreased to them, or transpiration can be decreased to them. Then application of the anti-transparent. First is their trace tolerant chemicals. Certain of this location there is a very less number of water rainfall. Certain of the location there is a drought in condition. At that time these are anti-transpiration very useful or beneficial to them, for these certain of this plant are tolerant for so many duration. For without water they can be survive to them on that location. These are dependence of chemicals very useful or beneficial to them. Using in floriculture, you know, sort of floriculture is also very useful to them. When flower can be cut to them, this flower are they can be only fresh for 1 day, or sort of the flower are for only few of the hours they are fresh. So after certain times, ultimately in the atmospheric pressure, atmospheric temperature, humidity, these flowers can be dry out within one day or about 2 to 3 hours after. And these chemicals they can be using to them, they can be sprayed to them on the surface of the flower. Ultimately this flower can be fresh for 4 to 5 or 8 days also. Used in ornamental plant, this is a management. Sort of the ornamental plant, sort of they can be survived to them. That plant can be very essential to them. Sort of so many species are endangered, and they can be very useful or so much beneficial to them for this environmental plant or ornamental plant. They can be grow to them without their loss on surface of the earth. Then application of anti-transparent used in the lawn management. At a peripheral region of these houses, there is a sort of they can prepare the lawns, and you can go in outside for 4 to 5 or 15 days. Ultimately, these lawns are dry out, and hence these chemicals they can be using to them. You can be sprayed to them at the pre-day of the we can going for outstation. They can be spray on surface of this lawn. These lawns are survive for 15 days or 20 days. They are live, and it is as it is without any side effect. But this lawn is very useful or beneficial to them to manage these lawns for fresh without their dry out. Another thing, their application is to prevent the fruit cracking. Certain of the fruits when at the much more of water molecule available inside the soil, also sort of there is a dry out or environmental factor they can be also affected to them, and these fruits are cracked to them, and ultimately these fruits are cracked, the market value is a decrease to them, and hence on the surface of the fruit they can be applying by this chemical or wax coating these fruit without their cracking, and they can be fresh for long time, for long duration. Transport of the seedling they can be transported from the one place to the another place. This is also very essential. Sort of the seed they can be germinate immediately, and hence these chemicals can be sprayed on surface of the seeds. Ultimately these seeds they do not side effect, do not affected by the atmospheric pressure or this moisture. They can be survive for long duration. This is also very useful or beneficial for this transport of the seed from one place to the another place. Then there are next point is the guttation. The guttation, what is the guttation? The loss of water in the liquid form from the uninjured tips. Set of the plant parts, there is a set of the uninjured tip parts of the leaves, stem, there is loss of water molecule in the liquid form is called as the guttation. Guttation has not been observed in all plants. Only few of the species, mostly in the grasses and certain of the another species, Poaceae family, they are the loss of water molecule through the outside is a huge amount. There is a appearing small droplet at the marginal portion. About 333 the genera, this guttation are occurring to them. The best example of the guttation is a oat, tomato, barley, potato, strawberry. They are just few of the example for this loss of water molecule in the form of liquid. Then another thing is the amount of the gutted water is negligible as compared to the transpiration. Transpiration can be lost about the 85 to 90 or 95% are occurring to them, and guttation can be lost about 1 to 2% only. This is as compared to the transpiration very less. Guttation of water is an exhaust from the group of leaf cell called as a hydrothode. Means there is a gutted water, means there is an exhaust to them directly in the form of liquid drop through their hydrothode, through their water stomata. The drop of water are often found on the tip of the grass blade in the morning. You can go outside at early in the morning. There is occurring at the marginal portion of the grasses, all the Poaceae family, there appear very small droplets are observed to them, and these droplets are directly exhaled through outside by this water stomata. It is called as a hydrothode. It is called as a gutted water. Then another thing is of the guttation. These gutted drop of water have been found in containing various kind of enzymes, sugar, amino acid, organic acid, and vitamins. These are certain of the hazardous substances. They can be also lost through these water molecules. There is not essential for this plant, and hence these certain of the enzymes, sugar, amino acid, or organic acid, they can be lost through them through outside. They can be carried to outside. The gutted water may be contain about 0.05 to 0.5% of the inorganic organic solute. Means there is only 0.05% or 0.5% only this water molecule can be lost through atmosphere. These are their best pictures for guttation. There is a marginal portion, there is a loss of water molecule are occurring to them by grasses or another sort of this species of the angiosperm. This is another very beautiful picture for the loss of water molecule to the outer side by this hydrothode. It is called as the water stomata. They are lost exactly by this in the liquid form through outside. Then exudation, there is a bleeding. Bleeding, they are exuded or they are derived from the exude to the ooze. Means the oozes out. Certain of these are injured part. They are bleeding are occurring to them. This bleeding means they are oozing out in a waterway sap from the injured part of the stem, branches, or other part of the plants. In this exude is the xylem sap, and exudation due to their local pressure and develop in the surrounding of injury. The local pressure of the pressure can be created to them, and ultimately there is a loss of water molecule can be occurring to their surrounding or peripheral area. This is called as a exudation. This is the best example, or is a bleeding, or it is called as the exudation through outside. Is the best example is the gum or on certain of the substance enzymes, they are lost to them. Student assignment: what is the antitransparent? Add note on guttation and exudation. Second question: mention the characteristic feature of antitranspiration. In our today's lecture, we will discuss about the significance of the transpiration, type of transpiration, structure of the stomata, mechanism of opening and closing of the stomata in the previous lecture as well as in the same lecture, and also we will discuss about the factor affecting the rate of transpiration. There is a different factor are affecting the rate of transpiration, which the best example is the wind, light, a little bit of water molecule, then humidity in the atmosphere. There is a different type of external factor also in the internal factor, number of stomata structure, number of the leaves, size of the leaves, presence of the stomata in upper lower surface, presence of their cuticle, presence of their epidermal cell. These are different factors they are affecting the rate of transpiration. Then antitransparent is antitransparent. Why they can be very useful or beneficial to them? This antitransparent is a very useful or beneficial to them for there is about 99% of the lost water molecule can be occurring through the atmosphere, and these water molecule can be minimized to them by using these different types of the chemical substances, like certain of the chemicals, certain of the wax coating. They can be using to them for minimize the loss of water molecule through the atmosphere by using these different types of substances. And there is very useful or beneficial for the plant for survive for few hours or few days or 1 month. They can be applying by this anti-transparent substances. With guttation, there is a loss of water molecule in the liquid form through their marginal portion, and there is certain of the opening, certain of the aperture, and that aperture called as a hydrothode. What is called as a water stomata. And this hydrothode or water stomata, they lost the water molecule through outside in the liquid form at the marginal portion. It is called as a guttation. Or certain of these plant they can be lost through in the substance, certain of the substance called as the gum, or certain of the other substance they can be lost through them. But there is a harmful for the plant growth and development. Exhaustion, they direct certain of the injured part. At the tip portion of this plant there is injured to them, and this injured portion there is loss of through them, and is a exhaust to them, and there is a very loss of water molecule through the outside side, and these plants are exhaust certain of the water molecule. Thank you so much.